All right, everybody. Once again, we are honored to have Jay Thompson of hikethemountain.org with us. Jay, I'm so excited, right? Just got off a nice big trip on the Appalachian Trail. Um, it- Before we go into this particular trip, remind everybody listening. Now, the AT is 2,100 and how many miles?
Just it's about 21. It'll every year it varies because they adjust the trail a little bit, but it's just under 2,200 miles. So I think last I looked, it was like 2193, something like
Okay.
that.
A lot of people, well, not a lot, many people every year set out in early spring to hike the entire trail, starting in Georgia, hopefully making it to Mount Katahdin or Katahdin, however you pronounce it, in Maine by
Hmm.
October. Now, you're doing it a different way. Is your goal to get on the entire trail? Are you doing segments? What's your goal here?
Yeah. So let's see, I'm 54. So when I turned 40, I set this goal that I wanted to hike the entire Appalachian Trail in sections, starting from Georgia all the way to Maine. I set that goal when I was 40. I wanted to do finish when I was 50. I didn't quite get there. But over the past 14 years, I've done just under 1,700 miles, and I've got a buddy that goes with me. And I was looking back, I was doing some numbers. We've actually, over the past 14 years, we had to take 1 year off. Actually, with the COVID year, we didn't go. But we averaged 1,700 miles in 13 years. So whatever that math is, it's 115 or so miles we average when we go. This past trip, we actually went. We did 159.7 miles in 10 days. So
Wow. So you're
it was
averaging
awesome.
15, 16 miles a day. And this is no easy footpath, right? It's not paved. I've been, look, I've only done like 8 miles of it, but it was not easy stepping.
No, every time when me and my buddy Greg, we get to the top of one mountain, we look down in the valley and see the top of the other. We'll always say, like, it's be a great place for a zip line just to go from peak to peak if it was possible. But there's nothing like that out there. There's no moving sidewalks. There's no handrails and all that stuff. It's just, um, I believe somebody did study. I think if when you did the whole entire trail, it would be the equivalent of hiking Mount Everest like 16 times with the elevation gain up and down and all of that. So,
Wow. Wow, I didn't
yeah.
realize it. I knew there was a lot of elevation. I had no idea it was that much. So, all right, a silly question. I think I may have asked you this before, but man, as a hiker myself, I just realized that the boots I've been hiking in are a good decade old, held together mostly by Gorilla Glue and duct tape. So my hiking buddy said,
Yeah.
"Look, man, it's time. What do you put on your feet for a 16 mile a day difficult hike?"
So I just retired my third pair of boots at the end of this trip.
Mhm.
I've had uh, I've had Solomon, I think was the name of my second pair. This
Okay.
last one was a pair of Under Armour boots that they make, and they were super light,
Mm,
but they lasted the shortest amount of time, not because they weren't quality, but because they got me through the state of Pennsylvania, which is nothing but rocks. And
mm.
I've met people that said just going through that state destroyed their boots, and they had to get brand new ones when they were done. So I just got some new ones. There are New Balance trail runners that I'll be breaking in now to get after it. So, but that's usually what I wear is I what I heard is a pound on the feet is equal to 5 pounds on your back. So I try
Wow.
to make sure my shoes are as light as possible um, and as durable as
That's
possible when I'm out there.
I didn't realize that, but from somebody as experienced as you, a pound on your foot is like five on your back. So definitely, I
Yeah.
tell you what, those old boots had so much mud and Gorilla Glue on it, they must have weighed 5 pounds. So maybe not a good idea. Now, Jay, I respect you. You are a great human being, a wonderful speaker. But I got to point out to you, at 54 years old, wearing New Balance hiking boots, you're becoming the stereotype, man.
Yeah. Well, they don't look like the typical New Balance. They're not white with a big giant N on them, and I don't wear dark socks with them pulled up to my knees. But although sometimes I feel like that when I'm out there. But
Oh, I bet.
yeah, Yeah, my kids laughed at me when I ordered those. They're like, "Okay, Dad, come on, you're turning into, as you said, that guy." So,
Right. I
but
mean, you are in
they
that age range, man. They are marketing right to you.
that's right. So, if you see me out push mowing the grass in my knee high black socks with my white New Balance shoes on, you have the permission to come out there and chase me back in the house.
That's
So,
great. So how let's see, you were out on the trail for 10 days. Where were you hiking this time?
um, where we were in this time we were up in let's see, we had part of Connecticut to finish. We had about a 25-mile stretch there um, that we had skipped over because we wanted to actually float that section on the Housatonic River. It kind of parallels the river, parallels the peaks and the mountains, and we were going to do that. That's called aqua blazing. So you got
Mhm.
white blazes on the trail when you're out there, and people that do that's called aqua blazing. And so we were going to do that, but the water was too low, so we actually saved that 25 miles for the end, and we finished up Massachusetts and got about halfway through Vermont. Is where we were
Wow.
at, and it was a great trip this year.
You are closing in on the finish line, man. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And now aqua blazing. I've seen video of that. There's a place my hiking buddies and I like to go up in Michigan in the Manistee National Forest near the Manistee River. And there's a beautiful loop around there, part of the
Hmm.
North Country Trail, which is a national trail, kind of like the AT, but going different directions. And then the Manistee Trail makes a nice loop. And I've seen individuals kayak, they walk up and kayak back down with,
Wow.
45 pounds of gear or something like that. I mean, have you done aqua blazing before? It looks interesting, but I don't want to tip over and get all my gear wet.
Well, interesting that you asked that question. So last year, when we were Greg and I had scooted up to in Connecticut, and we knew we wanted to try it last year. We were going to try that on the Housatonic, and I have a two-person kayak and a sit-on-top kayak, and so we packed that in the back of Greg's truck and drove 1,100 miles up to from Georgia up to Connecticut there. And long story short, we put that joker in there. It was 1st of December. There's about 3 or 4 inches of snow on the ground, and we get in that, and about 300 yards from where we put in, it got crazy and it tipped us and dumped us
Oh,
in the water. And I got to tell you, man, the water was way over our head. Everything dumped out. We dumped out. Um, and I just remember coming up, and I was able to grab the side of the kayak. I looked at Greg. He had grabbed the side of the kayak, and we had the face mat, or really I guess it's whatever that buff is, kind of thing
mhm.
around, just to kind of keep the wind off. And when we came up, we both had that up, and I couldn't breathe because that I tried to suck in, and I had nothing, and I could see that panic on his face. So I reached over and pulled his buff down, and I got mine down, and we were able to finally swim that thing over to the side of the river. And I mean, it was cold. I'm cold. And by the time we were, luckily, like I said, we're only about 300-400 yards from the truck where we had put in. And so we drug that thing up the hill. Greg was able to walk back to get the truck. And unapologetically, we stripped down butt naked right there in the street and put on dry clothes. Oh my gosh. It was the clothes that we had taken off. By the time we put our new clothes on, they had frozen on the side of the truck.
I
So
bet. Oh my
it
goodness.
was it almost set up as one of those Discovery Channel lucky to be shouldn't be alive shows right there. Is what
It
it almost
totally
turned
sounds
into.
that way.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So, I mean, did you guys
Yeah.
set back out on the trail and knock some miles out, or was that it for the trip?
Oh no. We that was we just went, got warm, and got the kayak stowed away, and then we started walking instead of paddling. So it was all
Wow.
good.
That, I mean, that truly is amazing. The gentleman I hike with, we've gotten to that point. We were just joking about this last time we were out on the trail, that it's really nice to hike 3, 4, maybe 5 miles into a comfortable location next to a stream, set up camp, and base camp for a while. We haven't
Yeah.
done those 12 to 15 mile days in quite a while, and right now we're okay with that. But with the goal you have, I mean, it's just amazing. What a great story. What a story of, like, really, achieving through some really difficult odds.
Mm. Yeah, it's been a lot of things I've learned along the way, and one of the things, and I get a chance to speak to different companies and stuff about their culture and the whole thing of hike the mountain. I typically tie the lessons that I have learned from hiking into um, principles and practices on helping organizations, live out the kind of culture that they say to believe in, and help their behavior match their belief. And so through that, I've learned a lot of stuff, and it's amazing when you put out a challenge for yourself and you start pursuing that, things you never knew about, things you learn along the way, all of that, how applicable that stuff has been to my life personally, and to organizations and stuff. So that's been a great journey over the past 14 years,
Mhm.
to be able to take something I'm passionate and I love and translate that into some principles and practices for other people to hopefully encourage them in their personal growth and organizational growth as well.
Yeah, I mean that truly is amazing. We talk often about exercise, especially difficult exercise with goals in mind, but especially something like what you're doing, hiking a 2,000 plus mile trail. I mean, that is one of the key components to developing resiliency in life and resiliency in culture and just so many other healthy aspects. So I mean, I love talking to you about it. I'm curious what, we talked beforehand. You've got some videos put together that you shared out on YouTube. We'll definitely include that link in the show notes. But also you said there were a good 5 lessons you pulled out of this trip in particular. Any one good story, one you want to share, one you want the audience to know about?
Yeah, I was thinking through that. One of the things this trip, especially up in Vermont, it was so wet. It's wet, muddy, and boggy and stuff like that. And you would walk, and you would have to, am I going to sink down, shin deep in mud, or am I going to figure out a way to do something different? And I just, what I was thinking about this, about in our life, the application I put was this: is that when we're walking in life, and there's I wrote it down, water or mud in front of us, we have two choices. We can either find a way around it, or we can find a way through it. And not both options are not always possible. Sometimes there's just not a way around whatever that water and mud is in front of you, and you've got to figure out the best possible way to get through it. So that means, do I find a rock or a log that is there in the mud that I can step on that will provide me some footing a little bit and go in like that? Or is there a tree I can hang on to and things like that? And sometimes, in life, there are opportunities for us to walk around some situations or some obstacles that we face. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's smart living and smart choices, to not have to, get muddy if you don't have to. But sometimes you just got to figure out a way through things. And that's the only way. If I want to get to where I'm going, that's the only choice I have. And too often I think people go, it's not, I'm not going to go through this. And so what they do, there was a quote by Napoleon, I think, said this, is that we give up what we want most for what we want now. And too often we
Ah,
stop in the moment, and we go, I want comfort now
mhm.
instead of what my goal is in the future. And so we give up that future goal for present day comfort. And so sometimes, you know what, you just got to get your feet dirty. You got to go through it. Wisdom is knowing, one of my mentors told me this: wisdom is knowing which stumps to plow around and which stumps to blow up. And sometimes you got to get there and blow up some stumps and get yourself muddy and get on through things and move forward. So that was one of the things I just was reminded of, because it was so much water and so much mud and muck on this trip. And it just one of those lessons that I was like, wow. Then, that's kind of where we are sometimes in life. There's
Yeah.
a big old mud puddle in front of us, and we got to get through it.
Yep. I totally agree. And often, I mean, I think there's a third option for some people, and that's just to stop. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
that's not always the healthiest way to live in. And when that becomes a lifestyle, I mean, you find yourself becoming stagnant or stuck, or just not moving forward, right?
Yep.
But what I've found also is sometimes when we make it a habit to constantly seek a way around an obstacle in life, that also becomes, just a tendency to avoid or develop anxiety or fear for what's ahead. And you're right. Sometimes You just got to plow ahead. And I mean, that's a beautiful metaphor. You just got to plow ahead and get a little muddy. And hopefully somewhere in your life you have those stumps or rocks or logs or those people in your life that can either
Right.
help you or you know, pull you through with them.
Yeah. And you know what? Some of the times I thought in my mind, I saw the mud is deeper than what it really was. I thought I was going to sink way down. And actually, when I put my foot in it, I didn't go nearly as deep as I thought. And I think sometimes over, we, we see the worst in a situation as just opposed to seeing the reality of a situation. And that's very different.
That is nearly poetic, my friend. You are so right. We look at that mud, we're like, man, that has got to be fun. I remember when I was a child watching that TV show and that kid sank neck deep in the mud, and that's what's going to happen to me. It's like, no, it was really just 2 inches. You're going to be okay. And
Yeah,
that's life
absolutely.
sometimes. That's life. Like you said, we can think it's going to be horrible and terrible. And when we take those first couple steps and get through it, we've really accomplished something.
Yeah. Another thing, when I was on the trip this time, we actually set the uh, our own personal record for the amount of miles we walked in a day. The most we'd ever walked in one day on the Appalachian Trail was 17 miles. It was in North Carolina. It was raining sideways, blowing about 40 miles an
Mm.
hour wind, and just going up the mountain. It was one of those where you just put your head down and you walk. But this time we had a 24-mile day and a 25 and a half mile day. Um,
Wow.
and it was just again, and I think the reason I was able to do that and Greg was able to do that is we had put in time prior to this to set ourselves up physically to be able to do that. But I was thinking about what does that mean for these big challenges that we throw out. I love that. I'm motivated by challenge and competition. That motivates me. That's something that if you tell me I can't do something, then you just drew a line in the sand, and I'm about to prove you wrong.
Mhm.
I took a personality profile thing one time, and it said no for Jay means come back and fight another day. And
Ah, that's beautiful.
so for me, when I think about these big challenges and things ahead, is too often we think we've got to step all 24 or 25 miles in one step, and you can't
Mhm.
do it. Right? You cannot do that. You will if you try to do too much too quick, you're gonna burn yourself out. And you're never gonna get there. And
Mhm.
so that was one of the things. You can't do everything in one step. That was one thing I
Mhm.
wrote down when I was thinking about these big days, and we were getting ready for that. There's no way to do that, but you can do a lot of small things over time.
Mhm.
And so what we learned was this: is that we look at the map, we'd look at our trail guide, and we would divide those 20+ mile days up into small stages. And so we're going to get from A to B, then we're going to get from B to C, then we're going to get from C, moving that way. And so learning to do that with the big things. I wrote this down on my paper right here. I knew where to talk. Is that we don't overestimate what you can accomplish in one day, and don't underestimate what you can accomplish in many days.
Mhm.
And too often, I think, because we didn't do all 25 miles immediately,
Mhm.
then we're like, I'm a failure. But the only way that you can, uh, I make these little walk and talk videos on my social media stuff all the time, and I always say, if you want to hike the mountain, do it one step at a time. And that's really the only way you can get through life and you can accomplish those big challenges. The only way a 25-mile day happens is you took the first step and the next step and the next step and the next step. And the 25th mile comes after all of those steps. I was looking back, I think it was 54,000 something steps I took that day, whatever that was, something like that.
Wow.
And so, again, you're not going to get to 25 if you don't take the first one. So I think a lot of people live in that overestimating where they're going to get quickly. And that just stalls us out. Back to what you were talking about with the face in the mud, is that we stop.
Yeah.
So I think that's a struggle for some people.
Jay, that is, I mean, that is such, again, I continue to go back to, physical achievement, difficult goals, and exactly what you're doing is such a beautiful metaphor for life and so many lessons out there on the trail. Now, as a bit of a hiking nerd myself, I'm curious, that 25-mile day. how many hours do you think you put in? What kind of pace were you guys making, and what kind of terrain are we talking?
Uh, so we would have some elevation gains of 1,000 to 1,500 up, and we would have similar ones coming down all day long. The 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 total the high elevation is, you don't get the super high elevations up there in Connecticut and Massachusetts and in Vermont there as much as either like in the Smokies or when you get in the presidential range up in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
But whether if you're walking 1,000 miles up, it doesn't matter if you're walking from elevation 0 to 1,000 or elevation 4,000 to 5,000. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so, we would start that morning, the 25-mile morning, started before the sun came up, and we finished just before it went down. So, just walking all day long. But it's all about you. You're talking about pace. I think you got to understand your pace. Greg and I hike it a little bit different, and so what we do is we figure out a section that we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
He will drop me off. It's called slack packing, so you don't have to carry your big backpack the whole time. And he'll drop me off at one spot in the trail. He'll drive back or drive forward, depending on where the next park-in or spot is that we want to do. And we actually hike toward each other, and then we meet and we hike back to a vehicle if it works that way, or we spend the night in the middle and then hike back out and do that kind of stuff. And so that day, what I learned is those big days like that, I always want to be hiking back to a vehicle that gets me to a place where I can get a hot meal that night. There's something about having that at the end. One of those days we knew that there was a little grocery store where the car was parked, and we were able to go buy 2 ribeye steaks and grill them out at camp that night when we got back. It was best steak ever on the trail. I'm telling you, when you earn it, it tastes awesome.
Yep. Absolutely. That had to have been the most amazing steak ever grilled by any human being after 25 miles. But so many great points there, right? Because you didn't just knock out 25 miles one day. You planned for it. You got yourself ready for it. You as you said, you took time before this trip to prepare yourself physically and obviously mentally. And I think that's so important. And I talk to people about this a lot. When you have some kind of big, audacious goal, right? Something you really want to accomplish, having that meaningful reward at the end is so powerful. And that ribeye sounds like that was one heck of a meaningful reward, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? I think we need to do that in our life. And it doesn't always have to be big challenges. It's just, for me, I love, as I check things off my to-do list that, I can do 3 or 4 of those, and I'm like, okay, I earned some time to get up and walk around and go do something, and
Yep.
Grab another cup of coffee and walk outside, and just small little. You know this better than me, but in our brain, there's some chemicals that kick in when we accomplish something or reward ourselves that reinforce us to go back and accomplish things and keep rewarding ourselves. And at the end of the day, it becomes less about the reward, but it becomes more about the process of what you're doing to get to that reward. And so the reward doesn't have to be a ribeye. It's always good when it is, but it doesn't have to be a ribeye.
Exactly.
But it can be those small things, and we train our brain to work and accomplish things, because of those rewards.
Jay, I know I said it last time we chatted. I'll say it again. You are more a neuroscientist than you know, man, because you were right on it there. I was just watching a video a while back ago, and it reminded me that when we do those, when we reward ourselves positively, not, you said train your brain, we are literally creating new neural pathways in the brain, reconnecting different parts of the brain that might have not have been awake before then. And the more we do that, when we reward ourselves in a healthy way, with a ribeye, with getting up and going for a walk, with a cup of coffee, we develop these healthy pathways in our brain that encourage us to accomplish more. Unfortunately, we can do the opposite when we train ourselves with unhealthy things, substances and spending and things like that create unhealthy neural pathways. But man, you hit it right on the head. When we reward ourselves, when we push ourselves to do difficult things and take care of ourselves at the end of it, man, it really does healthy things for us, and that leads to continuing paths like that in life. So
Hmm.
all right, so I know
Wow.
you promised that there are several, you recorded bits of this.
I
It's
did.
on your YouTube channel. I can't wait to get in and take a look myself. I know I'm gonna enjoy some of that right when we get done. I love your Instagram videos and all your social media work, as well as where can listeners find the lessons you learned from this particular trip?
So it's on my YouTube channel. Will be the easiest way to go. It's just J. Hike the Mountain,
Hmm.
and I've got there's a playlist. It's just AT 2022.
Hmm.
I've got you'll see it's day 1 through 5, and then it skips day 6 because every time when we go for 2 weeks, and we always plan one day off, which is a Saturday to watch college football. And so it goes day 1 through 5, and then it skips day 6, and it's 7 through 11. And there's 10 videos in that little playlist. Those videos are less than 5 minutes each, most of
Hmm.
those. And it's just kind of the day and thing I'm learning and thinking and doing. And so sometimes they're a little rambly, and then sometimes they're just super quick and things like that. So go to YouTube. J. Hike the Mountain is where you'll find that, and you
Hmm.
can uh, basically find that on Instagram and Facebook as well. So
I'll make sure
you'll
we
be able to find
include
that information.
all of those links there because I know people listening will definitely want to see that. Jay, you've inspired me today, man. I hope none of my hiking buddies are listening to this because they will hold me accountable. But we have been talking about retrying a through hike of our local version of the Appalachian Trail here in Indiana called the Knobstone
Yeah.
Trail. And
Oh
if
wow.
any of them catch wind that I'm thinking a through hike might not be a bad idea, they might make me do that. So thank you for your inspiration today, my friend.
Yeah.
It's such an awesome story. I can't wait till the next time you get out there and to talk again. Thank you so much for being with us today. I know you've inspired me. Hopefully, you've inspired the audience too. Can't wait to chat with you again, man.
Yeah, Dr. Dan, I appreciate the opportunity. I enjoyed listening to your podcast, and some of our fellow Speaker Lab students that you've had on here. It's interesting to always hear the story behind their stories, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. And so just appreciate that. And my website is hikethemountain.org. You can go there. I do stuff with individuals and with organizations. I
Mhm.
would love to. Somebody just wants to talk and chat. I'll be more
Mhm.
than happy to do anything
Yeah.
like that to kind of help out. So
Yeah. If anybody appreciates just the small dose of wisdom Jay laid on us today, man, you got to spend some time with him, bring him into your organization because there is a lot of amazing hiking and life wisdom to go here. So, hey, Jay, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for your time today. And again, I can't wait to chat with you again. Take care, bud.
thanks, buddy. Have a good one.